Before we begin with the talk, two things were forgotten to be mentioned last night in connection with meetings. One is the deck, which is right off the balcony, off the solarium, also stretches right in front of the meeting room. So please, during meeting time, between 5 and 7 in the morning, 1:30 and 3:30 in the afternoon, and 7 and 9:30 at night, please don't walk out of that door onto the deck. At other times, the deck is, of course, available for sitting there. Also, if you want to walk to the eastern part of the land or up the hill, don't walk right in front of the deck on the gravel road, because that is disturbing to the meeting. Take a lower path or a higher path. Also, I forgot to give my usual little calculation about meeting time. Attendance varies so widely in retreats. There are about 6 hours of meeting time a day, 6 hours, which is 360 minutes. And by count, there will be an average of 24 people who would like to get into meeting during a day. I don't know whether 24 people want to go to meeting. Sometimes people don't go to meetings. But if we take the average attendance of 24, that would make 15 minutes per meeting if there was to be a meeting every day, provided everybody who's here is going to meeting. So we can take the 15 minutes as a rough guideline without feeling pressure if there is more to discuss or look at. There is a little clock both where the mats are and where the chairs are. So if both of us take a look, so it isn't all on me I don't like to end the meeting. I think it's good when both of us end it together. This is day 1 of the September 87 7-day retreat. And as it is the first day, and as there are people who have never been to a retreat here, and for the sake of all of us here, let us say a few things about listening to a talk. Because the listening and the speaking, the talking, are not the usual kind in which one talks from memory alone and receives to remember. Listens with the intellect, which remembers what the words mean and what somebody else has said, and the instant comparison that takes place, the rejection or the acceptance, the agreement with what is being said, or the tuning out if it is too hard, too difficult, too painful. Can there be a listening and talking which is open, which is not completely dominated by memory, but open to what is actually happening this moment throughout the mind and body, so that even though there's just one person who's talking, we all are working together in looking at what is being said directly for oneself. No one can do this for another. Direct looking is nothing that can be imparted or transmitted. It can only happen in an individual human being, to see something clearly for oneself. The emphasis here not being the self, but uninfluenced. To see the truth or the falseness of what is being said. So listening to a talk is work. There's intensity in it. There's intensity in the talking. It's a different mode of the mind, not the memory mode or the remembering mode, even though memory plays a part, but it is freely drawn upon to look at what was factually, what factually happened, if that's possible. Or to look what's happening actually now, right this instant. Inside and out. There's no different listening or looking for what's happening inside or out. It's the same attention, the same awareness, the same observation. And it follows from this that the person who's talking is not an authority. If the person was an authority, one sees the person as an authority, has an image of her as being an authority on what is being said, then there's the immediate tendency to accept or reject what the person says, to follow it, to remember it, and to sort of incorporate it into one's body of knowledge and information, and to act from knowledge, to act from idea. But the beauty of this work that we're engaged here is to act out of seeing directly, not out of the idea, convincing as it may sound, of what somebody else says. This is how we're trained. We're trained to act on the authority of our parents, teachers, elders, experts. Very, very little, if any, training do we receive and do we give our children to look for ourselves, to look for themselves, and to act out of seeing what one sees to be so. Or to verify what is being said, not to blindly accept it on faith. So anything in a talk that one needs to question further, that one doesn't understand, that one disagrees with, can one bring it to a meeting? To maybe let it pass at the moment, because if the mind becomes busy with an item, then one is isolated with that item, and the talk passes one by. One will remember again afterwards and write it down, maybe, if one doesn't trust to remember it, and bring it up in a meeting. What did you mean when you said that? Or can we go over that again? I don't see it that way. Let's discuss it. That's when this relationship becomes alive. And to discover in oneself the tremendous yearning to have an authority that one can trust, whom one can trust, gives one a feeling of security, to believe that somebody knows the truth, and as long as I know that somebody who knows the truth, it sort of may rub off on me somehow or other. I only remember what he or she said and apply it. A tremendous yearning for that. And because we have this tremendous yearning for that, we're trapped time and time again by following leaders, spiritual or otherwise political, whom we don't really understand what they're saying. Because the ability, the capacity of a human being to see and think for himself, herself, atrophies with this yearning and fulfillment of having somebody to follow. Somebody in all the scriptures and traditions that go with this somebody, the authority. That's where, as long as this yearning to follow operates in a human being and is not seen for what it is uncovered, detected, questioned, and put aside. As long as it operates, we are constantly in the danger of being trapped, and we are trapped. Because how do we know, how can we tell whether what somebody says is actually so? Whether that person sees, a person may have tremendous powers of conviction or charisma or strong voice, strong personality, a fascinating background. But that can all be conditioning, that can all be acquired through learning, through concentration, through identification with a tradition. Not only how can I tell whether somebody says what is so, coming out of the truth of the moment, not only how can I tell, but doesn't it behoove me to tell, to be able to tell that? Or else I'm trapped, I'm dependent, and so easily exploited, all the while exploiting the one that I put up as my authority. In the leader and the follower, there is mutual exploitation. This is to be looked at, thought about, but also looked at and discovered for oneself, not accepted. We can discuss it. I'm not talking here about the authority of someone who has vast knowledge of mathematics or physics, technical knowledge, artistic skills that one can learn from, because a lot of our learning is strictly cumulative. Needs a good memory to bring it into the mind. But in this work, there's no accumulation. Accumulation has to be seen for what it is, where it is in place, where it is useful and necessary, and where it is completely out of place, preventing the immediacy of contact with something, somebody, without the accumulated knowledge of what this something was yesterday or what he or she did or didn't do yesterday. With that accumulated knowledge in our relationship, we're forever out of touch. In touch with the memory, out of touch with the actuality, with the living truth of the moment of two people meeting together. Not that one may forget or can forget what happened, but one can see that as being the memory, the past, and in the way, and the immediacy of attention, not being in need of the memory. That's the beauty of it. It works on its own. When there's the immediacy and intensity of awareness and attention now, the memory mode is unplugged. It's not necessary. It's not in operation. If it's needed for something, it comes into operation, but it is not in operation when there's just awareness right now. It's in the way. What he's like, what he reminds me of, what she did, or how she's been over the years. And when there's this immediacy and intensity of giving care and attention to each other now, there can be change, there can be a newness. There is, not there can be, there is. That attention is the new thing. And it's in touch with the newness of all life every moment. No matter how much the rain battered on the leaves and the ground yesterday, this is a new day, this is a new moment. The puddles aren't the rain. A puddle isn't even a puddle. What is it? If the remembrance of what a puddle is recedes into an unnecessary background and one looks at the thing, the color, the shape, the ripples maybe from the wind on the water, without words, just the immediacy of it. In listening to a talk, we were saying yesterday that please, in this room, during a sitting period, not to move, to remain quiet, motionless and still. This does not apply to a talk. If you feel uncomfortable in the position, after a while, then it is perfectly all right to change position, move the leg, stretch it out or pull it in. It's just, can one do it quietly? Which means caringly, because there are other people around. And the care given to movement, the attention, that communicates itself. The care communicates itself. And we may touch each other deeply that way. Also, I think I mentioned it yesterday, do bring a chair in if sitting on the mat becomes tiring after a while with the carpet strips. Sometimes people ask me why I keep my eyes closed and talking. Sort of just get that out of the way. I don't quite know why I do it. It seems the best way of seeing what is about to be said. Not getting distracted from looking at what is being said by looking at this person or that person. Does she understand it? Is he getting it? Or all of such, or why this or that? You know how the mind works. We all share the same mind. One person in California said, "I know what you're doing. You are channeling." I'm not quite familiar with what this means, but I don't think I'm channeling. I don't think so. I'm not waiting for voices to come or for somebody to tell me something. I'm looking. And we can share in this looking. Maybe the word will come to you before I find it. I may talk too fast sometimes. People tell me this. You went too fast. I'll try to go slow. And if something was too fast, remember something about the topic and we'll go over it slowly again. Actually, if one really looks while talking, one can't just rattle it off anyways. But it may be so new that one has to go over it, and we will go over anything as many times as is necessary. It doesn't matter that it was said before, because if one doesn't speak and listen from memory, it's new again. It's fresh. One doesn't have to try to remember what one said before, and this is, I can't do this usually. People said, what did you say? Or you said such and such, and I don't remember whether that's what I said, and how does someone else know that he remembers correctly? But we can begin anew. That's the beauty of this. Oh, this is what I mentioned. We'll mention too at the beginning of a talk. Usually the topics for the talks come out of the questions of the participants. What comes up in meetings and needs to be looked at, and is usually a very general or universal thing if we scratch beneath the surface of what seems personal. Scratching beneath the surface of what seems so personal, we usually touch fundamental human problems that we all share and that we can all look at, meet completely. So I hope no one will feel hurt or or flattered. That's the other side. We are hurt or flattered. If a question is brought up, it's of course anonymous. I may not even remember who said it. It may not be formulated in precisely the same way, because many similar questions may have come up with different people, and a new sort of consolidated question emerges. So don't feel shy to bring up anything, to challenge what is being said. That brings life into this whole talking and meeting and looking and questioning. But also, don't think you have to bring a question. Sometimes people say, I felt terrible out there in the balcony, on the mat, as the place came closer. I still didn't have a good question. You don't have to have anything. I'm not expecting you to bring anything. We get together, we sit down, we maybe sit quietly or look at each other for a moment and then see what happens. Maybe nothing. Just the crickets and the wind and the birds. The heart is beating, the breath in and out. The mat or the chair, the feeling of the skin, the hands on the knees, it's all there. One topic that has come up, not just with one person this morning, and other times, is this whole question, this whole problem of loneliness. I don't think there's a human being in this world who doesn't feel lonely. At times, a lot of the times, most of the time, or maybe all the time. Is one interested in looking at loneliness, looking into loneliness? Maybe a retreat is a good time for it, because when there's no retreat, there are 1,000 ways and more of drowning this loneliness. And our degree of activity day and night, at work and at home, and the entertainment, the movies, the videos. I think that shows our escape from loneliness, our overactiveness, almost at all times. Don't believe it, watch it, look at it. Observe it now, when it comes up in sitting or in your daily life. One does not want to be in touch with loneliness. It's too painful, too uncharted. Actually, it's unknown. One doesn't know it. One runs away from it. I don't think many of us really know loneliness, really plumb it, live with it, be in touch with it, and see all that goes into it and comes out of it. The fear, the anxiety of this going on, lasting. Maybe I will be lonely for the rest of my life. Or if one has found something that assuages the feeling of loneliness, then the immediate clinging to that, the person, the activity, the entertainment, whatever it is, the work. to drown this pain of loneliness that one is not familiar with, that one maybe has evaded all one's life, as an enemy, something to be shunned, to be dreaded, to be shut out. And now we're saying, let's become friends with it. Become intimate with it. Wonder what it is, how it manifests, the thoughts and imagery involved. Can there be a feeling of loneliness if there is not an image of oneself as being the lonely one? The one who is missing something? Can there be feelings of loneliness if there is not memory? Either memory of times that one remembers one was not lonely. The memory may be false, but such a memory has tremendous power. Memory of times that one wasn't lonely and wanting to get that back. Either in memory or trying to get what one remembers as assuaging or healing loneliness. I wonder even if one has an idea of what togetherness is. If one has fantasy about what it is not to be lonely. Fantasy, not really the real thing, but fantasy what absence of loneliness would be. And then striving to realize that fantasied togetherness, or whatever you want to call it. And forever striving after it, looking for that relationship that one imagines will be the ending of loneliness. And yet not in touch. Only the idea of it. Having an image of a person one is related to as that person giving one, fulfilling one, what one needs. And forever hoping for that, or wanting that to happen, wanting that person to turn out to be that way. And so often the disappointment when this doesn't happen. The resentment. Because one is expecting something that one has thought about and clung to in thought, but doesn't know for real. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have we ever known relationship in which there is no loneliness, in which there is no feeling of separation? Or is this ideal that we're striving after? One has to look at that and be clear about it. Because as long as it's ideal, there will be loneliness right in the midst of relationship. Because one is not related to the person as he is, as she is. And oneself as one is, not as one imagines oneself to be. Our usual response to what we call the feeling of loneliness is I want to do something about it so it goes away, so it gives way to this other ideal of non-loneliness. Company, the ideal company. A fun person to be with, or a person to take care of one's needs, which is everybody. Everybody wants somebody to take care of their needs. How can we ever get together that way? Because as I want you to take care of my needs, you want me to take care of your needs. And how often is there a harmonic convergence of these two needs? That's why we talk about being romantic with each other, at least in the beginning. And these romantic ideas about each other help forward the difficult things for a while. Can one have a totally different approach to this feeling of loneliness? Not any resolution about it that it's good for me, I must be lonely, and then this and that. But just simply wondering what it is. Meeting it completely. If the occasion arises. And it doesn't have to be a retreat. It can be whenever it arises, not to shunt it out, shove it underground, drown it out, but be in touch with it as it's there, as it manifests. How does it manifest? Is it made up of ideas and images and the feelings that evolve from these images and ideas that emerge from them? What are these thoughts? What are these images? What are the feelings? As the whole picture, not an analysis. Always in touch with the whole thing. Not any longer the word loneliness, the concept of it, the horror of it, or the pain of it, but what is it? And what's the root of it? Is there a source of it? Not just, okay, I understand what you're saying, I must be in touch with my feelings. You hear this so much these days. We got to be in touch with our feelings. Who is in touch? There are feelings. They're there. When there's awareness, there's clear, there are feelings. But where do they come from? What's the source? I don't mean in our historical past, but right now. Our whole historical past is replaying itself every moment. I wonder whether that's true. It seems that way, it feels that way. when there's openness, openness without image to this hum, the shirt, the knees on the mat, the seat, the sounds in the room, the breath, the heartbeat, the whatever all there is. One doesn't need to label it. It's all there in all openness, without the feeling this is me. That's thought. Just what's there. Then where is loneliness? But if a thought comes up, nobody loves me, I have nobody who cares for me, or my friend has just left me, I've lost my wife, lost my husband. Or the one I'm living with does not care for me, is interested in anything else more than in me. With that thought doesn't come the ache of loneliness. It's already a whole pattern that is evoked. A pattern of thought and feeling. How it felt in the past when we had similar thoughts. How it has felt to our idols on the screen when they have expressed loneliness, or in our books and the novels. We're affected by all of that. The screen, the movies and television try to portray to us how we are, but we are affected to be how the movies portray us. It's a mutual influencing system. How do we actually feel? What is the root of our feelings? What's the source of loneliness? The root source, the bottom root source of it. Not to jump to that, we went through as one goes through it, what thoughts come up, what thoughts come from it, what thoughts arouse it. But not to remain with this kind of investigation, but to wonder what the source of it all is, whether it's loneliness or jealousy or anger or fear. It's all the same question. What's the root of it? Not now starting to think about it. Thinking cannot take us to the root of our being. To understand by watching thought and its effects on our moods, how it functions. A thought comes up and the feeling of loneliness, there it is. And the thought, its loneliness, reinforces that feeling of loneliness. Habitual reactions to it, of escape, and the loneliness follows, secretly, hidden. To be so intimate with all of that. And wonder whether there's a deeper source to it all. Which means to be quiet in the midst of what one calls loneliness. Really quiet. Not at all cringing or bracing or escaping. Detecting all of those movements, which are not quietness. Those are our habitual reactions. Detecting habitual reactions to loneliness and not going on with them. If you see something, you don't have to go on with it. It can be put aside or left in abeyance, in suspense, suspending it. And therefore touch again with this now unnameable thing. And not in touch with it in order to get rid of it by the end of the retreat or the hour. Do you see what that does? How can one be in touch with something completely, intimately, wholly, if one wants to get rid of it? There's already an attitude toward it, so there's already one part of oneself that doesn't want it, another part that looks forward to the goal, another part that makes a little effort, and our usual cut-upness continues. So we're asking about something completely new. This total meeting. The words are just so because there's no one who's meeting this loneliness. There's only loneliness. And it isn't the word. And you're not going to sleep over it. That's what we mean by meeting it, not going to sleep. Alert with it. And not exclusively with it, because there's the hum and the flies. All the different sounds and feelings inside and out. This wholeness of life is there. Sometimes people say, as you talk about this or as something happens here, there's fear. Okay. Meet it completely. Fear is usually already the running. That's the fear, running away. This could be this or this could be that, a thought about it, an inkling. What's happening to me? What is this me that's lonely, that's afraid, that wants to be fulfilled? I don't think there's any choice but to be quiet with such a question. Quietly open and aware of the resistance. Not wanting the openness, but aware of resistance if it's there. Not fighting resistance, just what is it? Not a wave of thought escaping unnoticed. That's possible, not all the time. but at times. Not a wave, a ripple of resistance, undetected. Just awareness of it, to see it. Not what am I going to do with it, that question is irrelevant. Just to see what's there. In this ocean of what we call loneliness, but which needs no name, and therefore no reaction for or against. That ancient dialogue comes to mind, often quoted here, of one person asking of another, "Who is it that walks alone?" Without any companion. And the response, "I'll tell you after you have swallowed up all the waters, all the waves and all the ripples of this vast river in one gulp." We will end here for today.